because I want to go to bed. But for the three of you that listen, I owe it to you to have this out in 2 hours. All right. Welcome back. Another episode of You're Alone. Um, so got a little bit to cover tonight. We're gonna make it quick, hopefully. Scrolling through Be Real to find what I wanted to be the opening quote. I think I passed it. I did. Found it. Okay. We're gonna dive into some philosophy here. Don't be offended. Okay. It's not as deep as you're gonna make it. But this is just a question that's been raging in our good friend Tanner Willis's head, in his heart, and in his soul. And maybe you guys can answer it for him. So, without further ado, let's delve here into philosophy. At what point does it turn into a cookie and not cookie dough? Now, when I read this, I thought he was trying to take a stance on abortion. Really did. I thought, you know, at what point does cake batter become cake? Bill Burr has a whole bit on that where he says that it's always a cake when you put it in there. So, when you're making a cake, you don't call it something else. You're not like, "Oh, I'm making this and it'll turn into a cake." You say, "I'm making cake." Just food for thought, philosophically. Um, Last week I asked you guys to send in some confessions, so let's read some of the good ones here. All right. So, someone confessed, I had a drunk face-to-face conversation with my college's president when I was 19, but was terrified. But this person played it off. Good for them. I've never talked to whoever. I haven't even talked to really any of my teachers on the phone, let alone the president of my current university. In 2020, I completely crapped my pants. Not just a skid mark, went full on baby loaded diaper. I went home, threw my underwear away, and then cried in my bed. I don't even know what to say. That sounds like fun. Um, I'm gay. Well, I hope that this doesn't stay a confession in the sense of like you keep it to yourself. Spread the word, spread the good word. I want to write a book someday about my childhood. Obviously, the mind goes to like you had a pretty sad childhood and some crazy experiences. Um, so if you confessed this and you listen to the podcast, um, I want more clarification. I would love to know like what you're referring to. Um, I done always hearted you so hard, and then a whole bunch of different heart emojis. Thanks, guys. Cuando visitas Lima? When am I gonna visit Lima? When I got cash. Cuando tengo la plata. Homo. I think they were maybe confessing on my behalf. I'm not sure, but this one might be my favorite. I am sexually attracted to Randy Marsh. Now, this is a clean podcast, and I feel like I can say that because he's just a cartoon character. Nothing ever comes of that. So, and I do know who sent me this one. Not because I looked it up. I know who feels that way about Randy Marsh. Um, all right. So to fill you in on the last week of battle brackets, we had the pen go up against the three ring binder, and the pen prevailed. So the pen is the office slash school supply of choice by the people. However, coming out of the tunnel after they just declared the winner, we have a new contestant. So, without further explanation into this, the pen is now defending itself against the TI 84 Plus calculator. The argument provided by ChatGPT. I was trying to get like an Eric Cartman or Donald Trump voiceover, and I had a couple places that could do it. Just the quality turned out terrible. So I'm just going to read it. But first, let's listen to Michael defend himself against the TI 84 calculator.
Going up against the TI 84 Plus. I think it brings back some good memories. One of my favorite memories that it brings up is how the math teacher that told you, oh, you need the TI 84 Plus calculator, well, they kind of lied to you. Yes, you need a TI 84. However, what you really need was a TI 84 Plus Silver Edition at minimum. The difference between the two, you might not realize, was that the TI-84 Plus, its whole point for having it in the math class, was its graphing capabilities. However, this was limited to only being able to graph 4 functions at a time. While that was usually not an issue, as you're generally going to be graphing only one function per lesson or exercise, there were many instances, however, where they would have you run multiple functions greater than 4. That's where the Silver Edition came in, as it expanded how many functions you were allowed to graph. Namely, it expanded it to 10, which almost never was an issue. However, there was even a better calculator that you should have gotten, was the TI Inspire, which also had the ability to graph 10 functions, but it introduced color graphing, which allowed you to actually differentiate between what lines you were charting. It also allowed you to zoom in. That would have set you up better for your pre-calc class, where they start talking about limits and derivatives. Because when you start zooming in on curves, you start to realize how the tangents work, and that sets you up great for trigonometry as well. So, the TI-84 Plus is great, except for the fact that it falls short of your next class. It works for Algebra 1. It will not work very well for Algebra 2 and beyond. So, when the teacher says, hey, you need this, what they really should be saying is, you're going to need better. And that's where a pen comes in, because so many teachers would rely on pens. And without the pen, what are you going to write with? If you use a pencil, what are you going to do? Erase your graph? No, you need to learn the hard way.
All right, Michael, good luck to you. Now, this is what ChatGPT said. I also told it to rhyme, so don't be alarmed. When it comes to tools, let's get straight. The pen's outmoded, just second rate. With the TI 84 Plus in your hand, why choose the pen buried in sand? Using a pen to do calculations, that's a path to frustration. The TI 84 Plus is quick and keen, solving math like a super machine. Why scribble and struggle, risking a blunder, when this calculator performs like thunder? A pen writes, and that's the end. Its abilities don't extend. The TI 84 Plus does so much more: graphs, data, and programs galore. It's like comparing a spark to a blaze. In tech, the pen is lost in a haze. Drawing graphs by hand, what a bore. Inaccuracy and tedium galore. The TI 84 Plus plots with precision, instantly visualizing your vision. That's some good alliteration right there. Why struggle with scale so crude and outdated when graphs can be instant and perfectly created? Pens need paper, a cluttered affair, notebooks and scraps scattered everywhere. The TI 84 Plus stores data with ease, efficient, clean, and ready to please. Digital storage beats paper stacks. A pen's chaos the T84 Plus lacks. In pen, oh my goodness, I apologize. In education, the pen is passe, good for notes, but not for the day. The TI-84 Plus brings lessons to life, interactive and sharp as a knife. For learning that's deep and truly engaging, the pen is left dull, simply aging. So ditch the pen. It's had its run. The TI-84 has just begun. With power, precision, and so much more, the future in tech, the ultimate score. Why stick with the past when progress calls? The pen is old news, the calculator enthralls. It's time to leave the pen behind, embrace the future so smart and kind. The pen is dead, old and outdone. Long live the TI-84 Plus, the champion. Kind of like a slant rhyme there. All right. So, who won? This is it for battle brackets, by the way. We're not having a surprise guest next week. Um, and again, want to thank you guys for participating, whether you were one of the contestants or just simply voting. I really appreciated your guys' input. It made this podcast a lot of fun for me to do. All right. Like I said, we're going to keep this moving. We're going to keep it short. Um, First of all, I do want to give a shout out to my sister Taya for having asked about. Um, I talked about it last week. Juice World's death and whether or not that's a conspiracy. Um, I didn't do any research on it. um, that's okay. I think he actually died. Sorry, Taya. Um, Braden Peck also responded. Good guy. We're gonna get him on the podcast. Um, he he was a big fan of the three ring binder in that last argument. I don't remember his quote exactly, but he responded to that last episode. Um, but yeah, real quick, I doubt I doubt this has happened, but let's see. Has anyone left a review? I would be so embarrassed right here because I guarantee you no one has. Um, all right. So, Sex Appeal 420 left a 5-star review titled "This guy is hot." This guy is hot and funny. Thanks. Um, we have the title got cut off, but stand-up guy with a truly superb something. Just like when your mother-in-law pulls up in a new 3500 lifted Cummins with the dual axle Hypershock and the aftermarket grill. It's a little strange, but dope is. So appreciate you, Lizard King 77 and Sex Appeal 420. Um, Again, I will read those. So if there's anything you want to hear me say out loud, put it down. Um, but the last thing I wanted to end this episode with, I've tried, uh, you know, entertaining this idea a couple different ways of how I could potentially tackle this story that I really, really wanted to cover in this on the podcast. But I think the best way to do it is just jump into it and take it and run with it. I'm not a journalist, so rather than try to act like I am, we're just going to jump into it so you guys can see my imperfections here and lack of experience with journalism. Um, in 2003 in Snowflake, Arizona, uh, something that never happens in this town happened. We had a disappearance. June Goodman, who was the um, mail delivery person, she worked for the U.S. Postal Service, um, disappeared from her home. So I hadn't heard of this story until I had gotten married, uh, and Tally's family kind of like filled me in on this. But yeah, so I'm on Reddit. Um, so let's jump into the story here. Um, On the evening of March 28th, 2003, June Goodman met up with her sister, Pat Fawcett, to have dinner. During this dinner, June excitedly told Pat about how she was looking forward to her upcoming retirement and the plans she began to make for her free time. The pair spent time in each other's company until about 8 p.m., when June decided it was time to leave and head home. However, June had fancied something sweet to end off her evening and made a stop at Ed's Market for some candy. She browsed the aisles for a bit and settled on 4 chocolate bars and took them to the register. Once she purchased them, she left the store at about 8:25 p.m. It's unclear where June might have gone to next, but it is suspected that after leaving Ed's, she made her way directly home. Her ranch style home was located at the end of a quarter-mile dirt road, and she lived there for years. June had become a widow several years earlier and now lived at the residence by herself after the death of her husband. Despite living alone, June always felt very safe within her community and didn't feel as if she had anything to fear for the most part. Once June got into her house, she settled in to watch some TV and eat her chocolate bars before heading to sleep. She was scheduled to work the next evening or the next morning. I apologize. But when her shift rolled around, she never showed up. This deeply concerned June's coworkers, as she was a very reliable employee who often arrived early to prepare for her deliveries. June's coworkers called her home to check on her, but when they failed to reach her, they phoned June's sister, Pat. Once Pat learned about her sister's unusual absence, she immediately got in her car and drove to June's home. Once Pat arrived at the house, she was quite alarmed right off the bat. The sliding glass door, which led to the backyard, had been left half open, and June's work van was still parked in its normal spot. The outside lights had also been left on overnight, which Pat found unusual, as her sister would typically turn them off before turning in for bed. Once she entered her home, she found the television had been left on, but there was no sign of anyone home. This was enough for Pat to contact the Snowflake Police Department, who immediately arrived on scene. Both the Snowflake Police Department and Navajo County Sheriff's Office became involved from the start. June, both the police station and the sheriff's office became involved. June wasn't just a beloved member of the community; she was also related to U.S. Representative Jeff Flake and State House Speaker Jake Flake, two prominent members of the GOP in Arizona. Police were feeling the pressure to solve this case in a timely manner, though they quickly concluded that her relations to those politicians were in no way related to her disappearance. I've heard the story and I never once thought of that. Robbery was also ruled out as a motive, as nothing had appeared to be missing from the home. All of her jewelry, her purse and wallet, and other valuable items were all accounted for. All of June's shoes had also appeared to have been accounted for as well, meaning that she might have left her home barefoot or at the very least wearing socks. Police looked at the scene closely to piece together what may have been happening that evening. They noted that it appeared that June had been sitting in her recliner and watching TV directly before she'd vanished. They also noted that where this recliner was positioned lent a view to the long dirt road leading up to her home. They theorized that perhaps June had seen headlights approaching and had opened the back sliding glass door to greet someone. They suspected that since the back door was left half open until morning, that June never went back into her house once she stepped out. There were no signs of a struggle inside the home or outside. Um, this led authorities to believe that June may have gotten into a vehicle willingly, either to have a conversation or to go to another location. They also noticed that there were no footprints in the dirt outside her home, making it impossible to determine which direction June may have walked after she left the back door. The search was quickly put on for the missing woman, which included dogs, searchers on foot, and helicopters. The search spanned miles in either direction, yet no sign of June was uncovered. All right. Oh, a spokesperson for the sheriff's office made a statement saying that it almost appeared as if June stepped outside of her back door and vanished into thin air. Um, all right. So the investigation started. They immediately uh, thought that this was an abduction. Um, Within the first month of this investigation, over 300 people had been interviewed by police. Some of these interviews being with coworkers of June. Um, this is when they learned of an angry postal customer by the name of Patrick Michael Kahn, who made threats against June the year prior. 43-year-old Patrick had been a regular customer of June's for years on her rural postal route. Can't believe I pulled that off. And he lived to the east of Snowflake. And At the time, the U.S. Postal Service had begun to refuse delivery of mail to customers if they did not use the designated address assigned to their home, and this angered a lot of customers, Patrick included. Patrick continuously refused to use his designated home address for his mail, and June continuously refused to deliver his mail. This led to an angry, heated confrontation between the two, which scared June enough to speak to her supervisor and put in a formal written complaint about Patrick so his name would remain on file. When Patrick realized that his outburst wasn't enough to fix the situation, he decided to go a step further. He drove to the post office and let a handful of June's coworkers know that he was going to kill her. Naturally, this frightened June immensely, telling her sister that she was deathly afraid of the man, and for very good reason. Patrick had recently been the prime suspect in another murder. Boom, boom, boom. This is scary stuff, man. Shortly after Patrick threatened June in February of 2002, Patrick became the prime suspect in the murder of Donald Sewell. Donald had been shot with a Russian made semi automatic rifle and left to die slumped over his vehicle off of Highway 77. He had been shot 13 times. The murder of Donald was the first homicide the town of Snowflake had seen in decades. Patrick came under the radar as a suspect when it was discovered that he was trying to sell a similar gun shortly after the homicide. Patrick had fled Arizona after the shooting, but authorities assumed that he had returned to his hometown in Ohio. However, they did not discount the possibility that Patrick actually remained in the state, never having left, and was possibly responsible for the abduction and murder of June as well. Um, then, in September of 2003, they located Patrick hiding out in Columbus, Ohio. They extradited him back to Arizona to face the earlier charges of child molestation. Oh, jeez. He never faced the charges of the death of Donald Sewell, and it is unclear if that murder ever has had a resolution. They also determined that if Patrick was in Columbus at the time of June's disappearance, um, with this and no evidence leaking to him, he was never charged with the abduction of June, but police did list him as a person of interest in the case. Patrick was charged with child molestation and sentenced to serve 21 years in prison. I did look up on this guy. So, in closing, her case is still open. Um, let's see. So this was written 2 years ago, and it said that if June were alive today, she would be 86, meaning she'd be 88 today. But let's look into Patrick Michael Kahn because I think he can get out pretty soon. Is it what 2003? He was charged with 21 years. Patrick Michael Kahn. All right. Ooh, nice. Convicted child molester proclaims his innocence, tells his side of the story. Um, Jeez Louise. Um, all right. Yeah, he's still in, but he's getting close to getting out. Um, there was also another person that they had listed as of interest, but um, nothing really ever. There was no substantial reasoning as to why. Um, if I had to guess, Patrick is the one. Patrick Michael Kahn is the guy that we need to take a closer look at. um, Although at this point it's probably futile. I don't know how you say that word. But yeah. So thank you guys for coming back to another episode of You're Alone, Loners. Vote just for fun. Um, and then yeah, check out the link tree in the description of this episode. You've got all the links to all the different places you can go listen to this. Leave a voice memo, email, all of that fun stuff. I believe if you follow the links enough, you can probably still find our merch site that's up from when we were doing Tender Mercies podcast. I do know that all that stuff is still up, so go check it out. Get yourself some merch. And yeah, have a fantastic week. I'll see you guys next Wednesday.